Good morning. Welcome to the White House. My name is Todd Park, and I serve as U.S. Chief Technology Officer and Assistant to the President. And on behalf of everyone at the White House, I want to congratulate the champions of change we honor here today for their extraordinary accomplishments as entrepreneurs and innovators who have made this country home. I also want to recognize and welcome all the other amazing immigrant entrepreneurs, scientists, and engineers who are in the room today. We celebrate each and every one of you. The facts are clear. Immigrants make America more prosperous and entrepreneurial. For example, more than 40% of Fortune 500 companies, from GE to Ford to Google and Yahoo, were founded by immigrants or the children of immigrants. Immigrants also generate extraordinary innovation as scientists and engineers. Immigrants represent 50% of PhDs working in math and computer science, and 57% of PhDs working in engineering, and make huge contributions to American economic growth. As just one example of this, I want to tell my father's story. My father, Chung Park, was born during World War II in a small village to a farmer in rural South Korea and grew up during the Korean War. His family didn't have much, but he studied and worked incredibly hard and eventually earned a scholarship to study chemical engineering in a magical country called the United States of America. He came to America to start his studies at the University of Utah in 1968 and was joined by my mother a year later. In 1971, the U.S. government opened up a window for permanent visas for technical professionals. Anyone who had an advanced degree in engineering and science was encouraged to apply. My father received a green card, a big break for the family. With the prospect of staying in the U.S. and working here bright, my father and mother made the big decision to have a kid, me. I'm literally here because of immigration reform. After earning his PhD in chemical engineering, my father joined Dow Chemical Company, where he worked for 29 years. During his time there, he became one of the most decorated chemical engineers in the history of Dow Chemical, authoring or co-authoring over 70 patents, second only to the original Dr. E.W. Dow himself. And my mother, who was actually the smart one in the family, raised two kids, my brother and I, to love this country with every fiber of our being. My brother and I then went on with partners to start a company in Boston in 1997 that built the first web-based software and business services for doctors' offices, a company that created over 700 great American jobs over the next 10 years and went public in 2007, achieving a market cap of over $1 billion on its first day of trading and is worth over $3 billion today. I can't wait to hear our champions of change tell their own absolutely amazing stories today. I'm delighted that we are joined here by Alejandro Mayorkas, Director of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS. That's the federal agency that's largely responsible for administering the visa system. Ali has done phenomenal work with his team to improve our existing immigration system, including a groundbreaking Entrepreneurs in Residence initiative that brought together top private sector experts and government innovators to streamline innovation pathways for entrepreneurs. This program served as an early proof of concept for the Presidential Innovation Fellows Initiative that I co-lead here at the White House. I encourage everyone here to check out the Entrepreneur Pathways at uscis.gov/pathways. It's a first-of-its-kind resource center that gives immigrant entrepreneurs an intuitive way to navigate existing visa options. And as you all know, of course, it's up to Congress to pass the full-scale, common-sense immigration reform we need. The President is encouraged by the bipartisan bill currently working its way through the Senate, which is in line with his own framework and includes his key priorities for attracting and retaining the best and brightest from around the world. Stapling a green card to the diplomas of advanced STEM graduates educated at our universities, creating a startup visa for immigrant entrepreneurs who grow companies and create jobs right here in the U.S., and clearing the backlogs of employment-based visas by eliminating per-country caps and exempting certain categories from annual visa limitations. This is a pivotal moment to get something big done for the country we all call home and the country we all love so much. And no one is more passionate about this issue than Steve Case, whom I'm delighted to introduce today. Steve was, of course, the founder of America Online, served on the President's Council for Jobs and Competitiveness, and currently serves as the chairman and CEO of Revolution LLC, chairman of the Case Foundation, and chairman of the Startup America Partnership, which just announced its exciting new incarnation as UP Global. Please join me in welcoming Steve Case, and many congratulations, everyone, for being honored today.
Thank you, Todd. And it's great to have an entrepreneur in the White House leading the efforts around technology and doing so many great things around open data and other initiatives. It's always great to be at the White House, and I appreciate the fact that President Obama and the whole White House team is taking this day to celebrate two things that I do care passionately about: entrepreneurship and immigration. The way I look at it is this country itself was a startup only a couple hundred years ago. A few people kind of floated over here on boats with the idea of a better life, a better world. They were real pioneers. And many of them led the creation of a democracy that is really the envy of the world. And they were the patriots who played such an important role. The other people that played a really important role, as you all know, were the entrepreneurs who built the economy and built the United States into the leading economy in the world. That's why we're the leader of the free world, and also was the pioneer at every important point, the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, more recently the information revolution, building not just companies but entire industries here that really kind of created great products and services for people all around the world, and also created this strong, innovative economy that really is unique to the United States. So it's important that we continue to build on that and continue to be the most entrepreneurial nation in the world. And I was asked to work with the president and a team on outlining a set of policies that needed to be put in place to make sure we remained the most entrepreneurial nation. One was creating the Startup America Partnership. And as Todd mentioned last week, we announced we were combining Startup America Partnership with Startup Weekend, which is a great global kind of viral effort to create this new Up Global organization. The second was to co-chair an initiative called the National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship that made a series of recommendations. And then President Obama's Jobs Council chaired an effort around entrepreneurship. And that roadmap that thankfully people in Washington have been paying attention to. A year ago, in an election year when people said nothing could get done, Republicans and Democrats in the Senate and the House, working with the White House, passed the Jumpstarting Our Business Startups Act, creating a pathway for young companies to go public, creating legalizing crowdfunding as a way to raise capital. There's still some work to be done by the SEC to actually put the rules in place for that, but it really will unleash capital for a lot of entrepreneurs in a lot of parts of the country and a lot of sectors of the economy that don't have ready access to the capital they need to get started. That was a good first step, but now the focus has really shifted to immigration. And when you're in Washington and you hear it talk about immigration, it's often framed as sort of a problem that we need to solve. I view it instead as sort of an opportunity we need to seize, and the fact that you're all here, you understand the importance of this. How do we make sure it's not immigration in a policy wonky kind of way, but really how do we win the battle for talent, which is now a global battle, and really continue to be a magnet for people from all around the world who want to come here and start companies here or join startups here. As Todd mentioned, the fact that not just the startups that we're forming, and about 50% of tech startups are started by at least one of the co-founders is an immigrant, but 40% of our largest companies are Fortune 500 companies that have these global footprints were started by either immigrants or children of immigrants. So the immigrant story is central to America. The entrepreneurship story is central to America. And immigrant entrepreneurs, which is what we're celebrating today, really join them together in a way that's really quite powerful. So I just wanted to come and thank you all for doing what you're doing, not just in creating companies that can create products and services and improve people's lives and create jobs and drive the economy, but also being symbols that can really inspire others to follow this path and to also participate in the startup economy, because that really is where the growth and innovation is going to come from. The Kauffman Foundation, which does great research on this, said in the last 3 decades, 40 million jobs have been created by young, high-growth startups, which accounts, in their view, for nearly all the net job creation in the country. And so what you're doing is not just important in terms of your own business or supporting your own community. Collectively, it's essential in ensuring that we do have a strong economy and do remain the world's most entrepreneurial nation. So it's a great day to be at the White House to celebrate the work of so many people on the panel and the audience. You should be proud of your achievements, and I'm delighted to join you to celebrate what you've done and what I'm sure you'll do again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Todd, and thanks again for everyone for joining us here today for this very exciting recognition ceremony. My name is Doug Rand. I serve as a senior policy advisor here at the White House in the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and it's really an honor to share the stage with these 6 champions of change who we're recognizing today as truly extraordinary entrepreneurs and innovators in their own right. What I'm going to do is briefly introduce each of these champions, ask them to take a few minutes to tell their stories, and then I might ask a few questions that we can discuss together. So one caveat as I introduce everybody. Everyone here has multiple titles, so I'm just going to stick to one, but they're all impressive, and so I'm going to do my best to introduce folks. So seated to my left, we have Shraddha Agarwal, co-founder of Context Media. We have Ridhiman Das, founder of Galleon Labs, among numerous other companies, as you'll hear soon. Ashifi Gogo, founder of Sproxel Inc. Jonas Korlach, Chief Scientific Officer for Pacific Biosciences. Victoria Ransom, founder of Wildfire. And Zach Renat, founder and CEO of Model N. So without further ado, we'll just go down the line for a couple minutes before Q&A. And everyone in this room really, I think, wants to hear your story, both as an immigrant, as an entrepreneur, as an innovator. How did these things intertwine, and what did coming to this country enable you to accomplish? So Shraddha, let's begin with you.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you for having us here as well. It's great to meet all the other champions here, and it's very inspiring to be in this room. My personal story, I think I'm living my mom's dream vicariously, and she's watching the live stream of this event halfway across the world in India. My parents started with not too much more than an education in India, and they had dreamt for me and for my brother to use this education, to receive education abroad and be able to utilize that for other opportunities. Ever since I was little, I was very impatient and I was tinkered with things. I was in 4th grade and I was reading a lot of books and running out of money to buy more books. And so I started to rent out my books to my classmates. It was an easy, convenient way to make sure they were acquiring the knowledge I had, and I was making money to buy more books to expand my library. When my class teacher found out, she wasn't too excited about it. She said that my classmates have their monthly allowance to buy ice cream, not to rent books. And I just made that an underground library at that point. It became the secret book club. I was in 9th grade and I started a science club on campus. I was tired of reading in my textbook how to perform experiments. I wanted to perform it on my own. One of the things I wanted to do is a volcano explosion in my lab. And I started the science club with hoping that I would be able to utilize everything I was learning in a textbook environment in real life. And so my parents had just visited the United States for the very first time for their wedding anniversary. They'd bought my brother a racetrack, which was great. He could build it, he could race cars, and they'd bought me a dollhouse. Soon after, I was bored with my dollhouse. I was like, what more can I do with this? And we had just learned two-way circuits in physics class in school. And so I circuited my entire dollhouse and went on to offer my services to put little lights and fans for my friends' dollhouses as well. I got a scholarship to go to a United Nations high school in Singapore, applied to college for a media program at Northwestern in Chicago. That impatience and that entrepreneurialism, a big word now, which I, of course, did not know how to pronounce a few years ago, continued in college. And I think the opportunities, the encouragement that I received by the education system here of not just how to learn, textbook learning, but really be able to explore, really be able to make mistakes, but get back on your 2 feet, learn from experience. I think that's the education system that my parents had always hoped that I could become a part of. And while in college, amongst a few other things, we started Context Media, which provides media services in the doctor's office to educate and inspire patients living with a chronic condition like diabetes on how to better manage nutrition and exercise to live a healthier life. That was almost 7 years ago, and there's been no looking back. Not to say the journey's been easy, it's definitely been a lot of hurdles. I moved here for college. Of course, the immigration system's very different when you move here later. And with a lot of the conversations that Mr. Parks has mentioned as well, it's been a great journey, access to capital. There's been a lot of things we've learned along the way. We, of course, keep a very close eye on DC as well with all the initiatives on healthcare technology, the initiatives around immigration, and several others, as well as things like Startup America. But I will say the opportunities we've had here, the land that absolutely has the biggest appetite for risk. No place is perfect, but I wouldn't be anywhere but here because it gives me the opportunity to make mistakes, to get back on my feet, to learn, to have mentors, and to have great initiatives like this one that really encourage entrepreneurialism and starting new things.
Thank you, Shraddha. Anyone?
So my journey is similar to Shraddha's to a certain extent. My dad was born in a very poor family in a remote village by the Himalayas in India. And he worked his way extremely hard through college and high school and all that, and ended up at the University of Cambridge, where he got a degree as a hematologist. And he was the first hematologist in the region. And so education had always been very big in our life. Growing up, my mom's a rheumatologist, and we were always encouraged to find out what we liked, and I was lucky enough to have been given all the opportunities to find what I like to do. And it just so happened to be computer science. We bought a computer, and I was absolutely in love with it. I was fascinated with what was possible, and I realized that the possibilities of the information revolution were just phenomenal, and that I knew I wanted to play a role in it. So accordingly, I found my way to college here at the University of Missouri, and I majored in computer science. And while I was in college, I wasn't quite sure how I was really wanting to use my skills. I did a few internships as part of those. In one summer, I filed 3 patents, and the internships were good. They were at big companies, and what I realized was I really wanted to be at the cutting edge of technology and innovate and discover something or invent something new that has never existed before. So I added on entrepreneurship to my studies, and when I graduated, before I graduated actually, I founded a company called Talon Helix, which had the broad ambition to provide jobs to college students while they were still in college. While Talon Helix was never really successful the way I had hoped that it would be, right after college, I started another company, Galleon Labs, which is a software consulting company in the Midwest, and in the last 13 months, we've had immense success with helping startups in Kansas City, Denver, and the Midwestern region realize their technical vision for their product. We've built MVPs and full-fledged products, and we've almost become the technical execution team for technical startups in the Midwest. And as part of that, I hired 2 of my fellow graduates, one of my professors, and about 13 other employees, and it's been a great journey so far, very fulfilling. Also, I'm involved with a company called iVerify. iVerify does iVein biometrics. We're a software-only biometric firm in the sense that we are in the process of commercializing a process which allows you to take pictures of the whites of your eye, and it determines the layout of the blood veins in the whites of your eyeballs and uniquely identifies you. It's a software-only solution in the sense that you only need a consumer cell phone camera as opposed to fingerprints or retina scans or iris scans, and we're really hoping that it's successful. So that is my journey.
Dr. Gogo.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashifi Gogo. I run a company called Sproxel, which helps consumers avoid getting ripped off. There's about $600 billion worth of counterfeit goods sold every day, and every year. And if you zoom into pharmaceuticals, about $200 billion worth of counterfeit pharmaceuticals sold every year. That, if you look at just malaria and tuberculosis alone, kill an estimated 700,000 people every year, which equates to roughly 5 jumbo jets fully packed crashing every day. So it's quite a big problem. What we do is we help consumers identify the pharmaceuticals and other products that they buy by tagging each physical product with a unique number. At the point of purchase, a consumer uses their own cell phone to verify the products and then get connected with the manufacturer, and then the manufacturer is able to conduct surveys and develop new products and so on. We raised a round of financing from Acumen Fund, so we raised $2.3 million. We were founded in 2009. We just turned profitable last quarter. And we've expanded to India, a couple of countries in Africa, and so on. So it's been a great journey, over 120 million items tagged so far, with a couple of million users in multiple countries. I came to the US when professors in Ghana went on strike because their salaries couldn't get them to put their kids in the classrooms that they were teaching. So it slowed me down a little bit, because out of high school is a 2-year wait before you could get into college. But I'm not upset that they went on strike, because it is a legitimate concern if you can't put your own kids through college and you're supposed to teach other kids. But while I was waiting at home, a couple of my friends came and said, there's this exam called the SATs, why don't we just go write it? And a couple of teenagers don't just go write exams, but I found myself influenced positively by my friends, going to Whitman College, got a PhD from Dartmouth, and started a company. So that sums up my story.
Thank you, Doug. It's a distinct honor to be here and to share my story with you. I grew up in East Germany, in East Berlin, what was then about a 10-minute bike ride from the Brandenburg Gate, as a son of a working-class family. And then when I was 16, my world changed a little bit, because the wall came down, and I helped with that, and I still have a couple of pieces. And that was very fortuitous. My parents were 18 when the wall was built. I was 16 when the wall came down, and so I also feel like I'm maybe fulfilling my parents' dream of pursuing my goals, and which was science. And so I was interested in the country that I had heard so many things about during my upbringing, during the Cold War. So I was an exchange student, and found out that it wasn't all that bad, as I was told, for the first 16 years, of course. And went back, did undergraduate, and then because the economic situation back then in Germany was quite difficult, and especially at the universities, I decided to come over for graduate school to Cornell University. And I was interested in method development, in particular in biotechnology, and in DNA sequencing and genome sequencing. At the time, the human genome was being completed, and it was very clear that even though this is a tremendous feat, as you all know, to decode the blueprint of the human genome, it was very clear that the $3 billion in the 15 years that had been spent doing it wouldn't be enough to revolutionize medicine. So together with fellow graduate student Steve Turner, we thought of a different way to sequence DNA, which hopefully will make it much faster, much cheaper to sequence your own DNA and the DNA that's in the bacteria and viruses in the environment. You're constantly exposed, and foodborne diseases and hospital-acquired infections are a huge health problem worldwide. So Steve founded the company, and then I joined shortly thereafter, and ran into a little bit of a problem because my visa was about to expire. And at the time, we didn't have those initiatives that I'm now so pleased to hear about. So one of the investors had a relationship with the United States Congresswoman Anna Eshoo from California, and she was kind enough to write me a letter to get an O1 visa, and I went back to Berlin and was able to stay in the United States and continue the pursuit of our company that way. And so now we're close to 300 people, and we have the first third-generation DNA sequencer on the market, and I'm really happy that Anna Eshoo helped out, and I'm extremely pleased that there are these initiatives that now make it easier for people like myself to continue their dream after the education in the university system.
Victoria.
All right. So I grew up on a small farm in a very rural part of New Zealand. I never imagined I'd be an entrepreneur, and I certainly never imagined I'd end up in the US. But when I was in high school, I heard about and applied for a scholarship to study at an international school, which was in New Mexico, in a little town called Las Vegas, New Mexico. Spent 2 years there. It was just the most incredible experience. We were 200 students from 90 different countries. There I learned about the US college system or university system and how amazing it is. So I decided to stay in the US. I went to McAllister College, which is in Minnesota. So I went from New Mexico to Minnesota. There I actually met my now husband, who's also here in the audience. He's an immigrant entrepreneur. We have since founded 3 companies together. He's from Switzerland. After graduating McAllister, spent 2 years in New York doing investment banking. It's actually right around the time when AOL and Time Warner did their merger. And had a really interesting time, was exposed to a lot of entrepreneurs, and that was the sort of the first seed that I had of, wow, looks like a really interesting, incredible experience that these young people are having, and why couldn't I do that? So in 2001, I actually left the US for visa challenges, and Alan and I started a company in New Zealand, an adventure travel company, which we grew to a fairly good size. We were in about 18 different countries. The company got big enough that we actually needed to develop a software solution in order to help manage the company. So, accept deposits, send out flight information, that sort of thing. So that was the first exposure to building software. Came back to the US about 5 years later for business school. So went to business school in Boston. And while I was there, and Alan was in business school as well, Facebook launched their fan pages for businesses. And so we thought that would be a great place to market our travel company. So we created a fan page and immediately discovered what pretty much every other business discovers, which is, now what? How am I going to get fans? How am I going to engage people? So we had the idea of giving away a free trip, but we discovered in order to do that, we'd have to build an application in order to actually run a giveaway. And we thought, well, that's quite a barrier to entry. We're going to have to go out and hire developers. Other businesses are going to have this problem too. So we decided to build a product that other companies could use. And sure enough, it really resonated with businesses. Company was called Wildfire. 4 years later, we had grown it to around 400 employees. We had tens of thousands of customers. Actually got acquired 9 months ago by Google. So from a small farm in New Zealand to what I ended up doing was completely unexpected. It's been an incredible dream run. So many people have supported me in my life, but particularly in the US. My college and the international school that I went to were both on scholarship. The wonderful people of the United States provided those scholarships, and then huge support through my entrepreneurial career. So it's just been an absolute dream time here in the United States.
Zach?
I'm Zach Renat, and I'm kind of, my story is very similar to all of you, and also a little bit different. I was born and raised in a rural village in Israel, and as an Israeli, I had to spend some time in the military. I was actually in the special forces of the Israeli Defense Forces. I was a captain, a company commander, and then got a degree in computer science from the Israel Institute of Technology. After that, I worked for a couple of years designing mission-critical software systems in Israel, and one of the projects that I worked on was actually jet fighter that Israel developed at the time. But the project was halted due to government funding. The government cut the funding for this. And my conclusion of this experience was that I really wanted to control the context. I wanted really to control my own destiny and become an entrepreneur. And it was very clear to me that in order to study entrepreneurship and business, it's going to be much better to do it in the United States. I was very naive at the time. I applied only to one business school in the United States, to a Harvard Business School. And I got in. Knowing what I know right now, I was maybe more than a naive. The kind of my period of time at HBS was an incredible period of time. I got to get to know a lot of good friends, American friends and international friends. I got an incredible education. Amazing professors, in particular one of them, Bill Salman, who is the kind of the father of entrepreneurial finance, and that's really gave me the tools to become one. I moved to Silicon Valley and I worked for Silicon Graphics. Silicon Graphics actually sponsored me for a green card. And it was an interesting time because I was an executive there. I traveled a lot internationally. And at the time, I don't know if it's the case, you had to apply for what is called advance parole every time that you leave the United States as a green card holder. Now, I think that this process was meant actually for people that leave the States once or twice during the green card process. I was ever leaving the States once or twice a month. So we had the full-time attorney that all he had to do is actually deal with my advance parole. And then the internet came up, and I was introduced to an opportunity by my wife, actually, who worked with two other engineers at part of the Jewish Community Center in Palo Alto. And in 1995, I co-founded a company called NetDynamics. NetDynamics was a pioneer in the application server market. We got 3 rounds of funding from VC, became to be a leader in the space, and actually created a standard that is called J2EE. A company got acquired by Sun Microsystems in 1998. Then I helped to start another company called Trading Dynamics. It was pioneer in business-to-business auctions. This company was acquired by Ariba. And in 1999, I left and started my third company. It was a company that I'm running until now, a company called Model N. Model N is an enterprise software company. We pioneer a space what we call revenue management. If you think about this, this is a process of managing every dollar that is touching the top line of the income statement. We target this in 2 industries, technology and life sciences. So we have very large customers, Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer and Bristol Myers Squibb and Novartis and Merck and so on. A company is about 600 employees worldwide. We are a truly global company with 7 global locations. And we took the company public in March on the New York Stock Exchange, and we're traded under the symbol MOD N. If you think about my journey from a small rural village in Israel to running a company that is traded on the New York Stock Exchange, this journey could happen only in the United States, and the infrastructure, the support, the culture of entrepreneurship here, and the friendship that I created along the way, I'm convinced could not happen but here in the United States.
Thank you again for telling all of your stories, which have some pretty extraordinary commonalities. One thing that's come up in almost every story is that here in the United States, we have this core competitive advantage in our university system. And so one question I wanted to pose to each of you, just jump in if you like, is what is it specifically about your experience at a U.S. university that helped prepare you to be an entrepreneur?
Well, my experience in the U.S. is mainly with Harvard and the business school. And in the business school at HBS, there is this notion of a case method. So there is never an answer. There's always options. There's always trade-off. And the way that you get to the answer is through a discussion with your classmates, with the professors, and through interaction. And I think there is something about this that is so right about entrepreneurship and about the business. There is not a right answer in entrepreneurship. There is always options. There's always trade-off. There's always shades of gray. And it's about really the interaction and the process that leads you to what's right.
I would say,
Go ahead.
when I was at Dartmouth, the engineering school started a PhD Innovation Fellowship, which allowed students who wrote theses to then translate them into companies. So it gets the inventions out into society to actually create change. So that was very helpful to educate engineers to basically become entrepreneurs to some extent. And secondly, I think you mentioned the scholarships. I knew nothing about student debt until I got my PhD. When there was an exit survey and it said, how much do you owe? And I put a big fat 0. And it put a smile on my face because after 9 years of education in the US, I didn't know anything. It was all free. And it allowed me to go out there and create my own job instead of finding a job to pay back the loans. So that also created a good environment for one to be entrepreneurial.
The other thing I'd add is I think the US education system provides for a lot of flexibility. So I went to Harvard Business School, and that was actually really helpful for my entrepreneurial career. But early on, I went to a liberal arts college, and I studied psychology. I ended up doing investment banking. I think there's a real willingness of employers in the US to look at not so much what degree did you study, but just who are you, what are your capabilities, can you be someone that can be trained? So I think that provides a lot of flexibility in your career, and even just flexibility in what you're studying. I think at age 18 you often just don't know what you want to be when you grow up. So the ability to do a degree where you're really just learning a set of skills, communication skills, writing skills, researching, argumentation, is very, very helpful, I think, and is different from a lot of countries' education systems, I think.
I think universities here also provide a community, whether it's a peer community within campus with professors, as well as the exposure to people with different passions, with different skills and interests, with a liberal arts education as well, where you really can experiment and learn a lot of new things and a lot of different things, but also community within a lot of cities. I think for us, we started while I was a sophomore in college, and our professors supported that. Our early angel investors, our early meetings, a lot of it came through the community that was built out of Northwestern, and a lot of relationships in the Chicagoland community with the college.
For me, what has been very useful have been mentorships that my university has arranged from throughout the community as well as outside of the community. So when I got into this entrepreneurship program, they brought in people who, just like yourselves, who had done incredible things just so we could spend an hour a week with them. And those were incredibly helpful just because there were people who had done it before and they had, actual words of wisdom to share with us, and we learned a lot.
In my experience, it's an aspect of fearlessness and the willingness to take a risk. So in the technology sector, in the science sector, I was very grateful for my professor to agree that we take on this different sequencing idea that I presented to him. And so I think in the university system in the United States, there is a greater willingness to take on research projects and ideas that seem kind of out there, and they may take a while. And so I'm grateful to the university system, to the funding agencies, being able to support long-term visions, being able to support long-term visions by the investment community, and then later on, which I think looking back at Germany, is maybe not so common, of having a PhD student take on something that might just not work. And so there's some risk, but with great risks sometimes comes great reward as well.
Thank you. Another theme that has come up repeatedly is something that could be considered another core competitive advantage of the United States, which is the access to capital that each of you had at various stages in your company. I mean, even just on stage now, we have a couple of companies that have gone public. We have companies that are in very early stages. It doesn't have to be all a rose garden, obviously, but I'd love to learn more about what are some of the major opportunities and challenges you encountered when you were raising the financing necessary to be ambitious and grow your companies.
I can start. So we started our company in 2008. That was actually a pretty difficult time to raise capital, which ended up working out very well for us because it required us to be very frugal and to bootstrap the business for a very long time, which we did. So for the first year or year and a half, we bootstrapped the business and were able to get enough of a product off the ground that we actually... next fortuitous thing is we were actually applied for and won a grant from what was called the Facebook Fund. So we were one of 5 companies that received a grant, which gave us enough seed capital to get to launch a product and get to profitability before we ever had to raise capital. So unusual history up until that point, but then we did go out in Silicon Valley and we raised capital. We ended up raising money from some angel investors and actually a growth equity fund, which was a little unusual. But there were a wealth of opportunities. So by the time we were actually looking for funding, it was 2010, things were picking up. Also, we had a business that had real traction. And in Silicon Valley in particular, there's just a wealth of different venture capital firms, different financing opportunities, which is for sure a big advantage, and I think something that creates an enormously powerful ecosystem in the United States and in particular in Silicon Valley, with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of venture capital firms, that really creates a real flywheel effect.
I think in addition to the private markets, we also really benefited from the SBA loans and credits for job creation in our state. It was a huge help to us as we were starting out and hiring people. We were completely bootstrapped. We didn't raise an external capital round. I am now an angel investor and have made investments into 13 companies in the healthcare technology space. And I think the private and public collaboration, as well as both individual markets supporting entrepreneurship, and something Victoria said earlier as well, is really focusing on the future and the potential of each person and believing in, again, giving, as cliche as it sounds, it really is an attitude of giving back here and sharing that wealth and generating more jobs and generating more companies and generating more capital as an entire system as well. And I think that's, in my opinion, unique here too.
Yeah, I raised a couple of hundreds of millions of dollars in kind of in my career. And it's go back to actually the first time that I raised money. And the nice thing that I like about Silicon Valley, it's always about the idea, and it's about the team, and it's about making a difference. And it's not important, you know, your education and your accent or anything else. It's about really pure about the idea. And one of the nice thing about Silicon Valley is also the notion that you can get money from other entrepreneurs. So when I started my first company in '95, I was able actually to raise money from a venture capital company. But at the same time, I got money from Andy Grove, from Dave Duffield, from Eric Schmidt, and a couple of other well-known entrepreneurs. And they were not just giving me money; they were also giving me advice. They will give me insights. They will give me support along the way. And in return, I'm right now also an investor in other companies, in other startups. So I think there is this network of entrepreneurs, of founders, that are basically in the business of supporting each other. Sometimes it's in money, and sometimes it's in advice and support and other means to support companies.
That's what I was going to stress as well, that it's not just the capital, not just the dollars, but more David Al and Glenda Perkins, who did the first round of financing for my company, really were mentors to us and really helped us, get the business off the ground, hire the right people, get situated in the Bay Area. And so that, I think, is unique in the sense that they were looking at this as a long-term commitment and a long-term vision, and not just flipping a company and making a quick buck.
And on that note about long-term visions, a challenge that I encountered was that when I tried to raise funding a couple of times, a major concern was what happens if your immigration status changes. What happens if you have to leave the country in the middle, and that was my biggest hindrance to raising any capital. And at the end, I ended up giving up on that effort. We bootstrapped two of my companies, and with the latest company, I have an American citizen who's raised on the money.
So I would say I'd love to see more Silicon Valleys on the East Coast. We're based in Cambridge, where people tend to be much more conservative when it comes to valuations, and especially when your company has significant overseas operations. So it is maybe slightly rosier on the west than on the east, but we're not about to move to the west. We'll stay where we are. We'll rough it out.
All right. Well, I have one more question. We're going to just do this lightning round. Last word. Another thing that's come up again and again that you've noted about what makes the U.S. special is something a little more intangible. This tolerance for risk, even an embrace of risk, even if it leads to a noble failure. So in just a couple of words each, we'll start here and go down the row. What is a signature failure that you've experienced that this country tolerated and that made you stronger?
For us, it was employment, being able to hire people who really were, again, okay not getting paid and missing payroll for a few weeks, at one point months, but still stuck through because they saw the vision, they saw the big picture, and they were forgiving, and they absolutely believed in something bigger.
Yeah, I would say the same. I have had this incredible support system of friends and colleagues who have worked on below market wage and have really supported me through the process, and I would not be where I'm without their help.
There's an ample supply of good advice. A lot of executives that we could tap into, especially with us, with IBM, that we get basically lots of free advice, which may be unusual outside the U.S.
Not a big failure, but the road that we took and the method development was challenging, so we had some moments where we weren't quite sure whether this is going to work or whether we could go on, and the support that we got and was really essential to keep us going.
I think nobody can have a startup without having some ups and some downs. from the outside, it always looks like it goes like this, but it never does. So we definitely had some rough patches. We had investors that really stuck by us through that, and certainly we had employees. Very similar experience. First employees that came along weren't paid anything at all, so they took a big bet on us. So yeah, lots of people have tolerated risk in the life cycle of wildfire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started my last company in '99 in the height of the dot-com era. We raised in our first external round $30 million of venture capital money from Axel and from KKR. And 2 years later, everything changed. The dot-com kind of bust. The financial market crashed September 11th, and we were basically not relevant anymore. Our original business model did not work. And at the time, the investor could pull the money back and do something with it because we still had quite a lot of money of this $30 million. And they stuck by us, and they let us actually transition the business model to something different, to focus on the enterprise, to write a set of applications. And 10 years later, we are a publicly held company. So that's an example of tolerance for kind of for risk and sticking by entrepreneurs. And I'm very grateful for them for the support that they gave to us.
Well, I want to thank everyone again for these tremendously inspiring stories. Let's give them another round of applause. I'm going to ask these 6 champions of change to switch places with the next 5 that are coming up, and then I'm going to give my chair over to Stephanie Valencia, who's Principal Deputy Director of the White House Office of Public Engagement and a Special Assistant to the President, who is going to ably moderate our second and final panel. Thanks again.
Let's go ahead and jump right into this. I'm just so excited to spend this will be the best part of my week, I think, probably my month, with you all. And welcome to the White House, and welcome to our Champions of Change. It really is an honor to share the stage with you, and I'm really eager to hear your stories. Soon you'll discover that each of these champions have very impressive stories that go along with their impressive titles. So I'm going to introduce each of them really quickly, and then we're going to hear each of their stories. We have John Herrera, who is the co-founder of the Latino Community Credit Union. We have Olga Koper, who is a research scientist at Battelle Memorial Institute. We have Ana Monyat, who is the co-founder of Upstart. We have Amer Sohini, who is the president of Ocular Therapeutics. And we have Siva, and you're going to have to help me with your last name. Sivananthan, who is a distinguished professor at the University of Illinois at Chicago. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over first to John to tell us his story.
All right. First of all, thank you so much for this great honor. And I want to thank God for bringing me here. This is part of my spiritual journey in my life, and my family who sacrifice themselves to do the work that I do, my friends, my mentors, and so many people who has given themselves to support me and mentor me. Without their support, I would not have been able to accomplish what we had managed to do together. I'm an immigrant from Costa Rica, and I'm the son of immigrant workers. My father was a farm worker in Costa Rica. Sometimes I blame him for chopping down the rainforest in Costa Rica for the United Fruit Company. But thanks to that, he was able to feed his family and raise 12 children, which I'm the youngest of them. And my mom, she achieved a 4th grade education, school education. So my father always planted in me the value of education and told me, this is how you're going to build your own future, and this is the best I can do for you. And I have 5 brothers and sisters. I'm number 12, I mentioned. I'm the youngest of them. 5 of my brothers and sisters, they die of curable diseases in Costa Rica because they were too poor and because they lived too far away to the nearest hospital. By the time they got to the hospital, my brothers between age, some preborn and some until the age of 5, they just didn't make it to the hospital on time. And I just promised myself that I will live for all of them. And I will fight for all of them, because it's not right that a child will have to die because where they are born, because they're poor, or because they don't have access to so many resources. And so I grew up always studying hard, mentor like Mr. Alston Jenkins, who is the founder of the National Park Service System of Costa Rica. My sister, who was an undocumented immigrant and worked for him, and he sponsored her in 1986 to become a U.S. citizen. He always taught me every time he went to Costa Rica and make a donation for a national park, it's like, kid, keep studying hard, get an education, and when you're ready to go to college, we will help you get a scholarship. And that's what I did. That's how I came to the United States with a scholarship in 1983. And so many other folks who helped me get scholarships. You know, I also washed dishes at the University of Delaware, where I got my undergraduate degree. I did everything that needed to be done to finance my education. And that is something that I told all my kids. This is why you need to study really hard. And there's people out there willing to open doors for you and help you if you work hard. This is something I love about this country. And I mentioned this because that's what had really formed me. I'm a social entrepreneur. I fight for people, you know, beginning with my brothers and sisters who didn't make it, but they're here in spirit. And like them, there are millions of other people who haven't made it, and we have a social obligation to change the world for them and for our children who are alive today. And everything I do it because of my Christian values. You know, God had asked us to protect and speak and defend and fight for the most vulnerable of our societies, for children, for widows, and for the stranger, which are those immigrants. Legal or illegal, documented or undocumented, those are our brothers and sisters. And I commend the leadership of this president and Congress for tackling, and hopefully this year we will get comprehensive immigration reform, and one that we all know because we see the results of it right here in this table and in our communities of what immigrants do to this country. This country was founded. We need to remember our roots as a nation and the contributions of immigrants to this great nation and to our future. In 1986, there was a rush of crime in Durham, North Carolina, and people were being killed and robbed because people carry cash with them, especially those undocumented immigrants. And I always felt I've been always involved, as we say in Spanish, I'm everywhere but in church, right? Estoy en todo lado menos en la iglesia. I was involved with the community, and we needed to find a solution to that problem of crime. So we went to the bankers, to the police, to the government, and in those times, undocumented immigrants or immigrants, you know, farm workers, they were seen as poor people who didn't have a good balance account, who was no worth of banking them. And I am in depth and forever grateful to the credit union movement, which is an international movement with principles of helping people. And they're non for profit, but for service financial institutions. And with the leadership of foundations, churches, and the credit union movement, and the community itself who volunteered to take a risk, we built the Latino Community Credit Union. And we put together, that's one of the gifts that God had given me, is to be able to put together people, to work together to solve problems. And we started the Latino Community Credit Union on June 26 of 2000 in Durham, North Carolina, to serve this community who were victims of crime. Today, 13 years later, we have over 56,000 members, 10 branches in North Carolina. Our folks are buying cars, homes. We finance all their banking needs, just like anyone else, because this is what the United States is all about. This is the country of opportunity, and the Latino Community Credit Union does that. I'm sure everybody should know by now that undocumented immigrants, they're no criminals. This is the who funded this country, and we need to change that picture, and that's what the Latino Community Credit Union does. Thanks to a dedicated team of folks who risk their lives every day. It's not just about catching checks and opening accounts, but it's about opening the future to all those children, to all those immigrants who are here to start a dream. Many of our members today had started companies. They start with a $500 secure card loan, and they buy their pressure washer machines, their lawn mowers. Now they own landscaping companies and painting companies and construction companies. They're building bridges. They're building America. And North Carolina has been blessed by immigrants. And this is something that's all what we need. We don't need a handout. We just need a hand up, an opportunity to build our own future. And I'm so proud of everybody who had worked on this project. I can't take credit myself for building it, because you can't build a social institution by yourself. It takes many people to believe on that. And that's something that I'm grateful to God for giving us the wisdom and the vision to do it. And for the people who every day believe in that, the foundations who sponsor us, the investors who deposit their money. There's a lot of folks who make this happen. And that's my story. Thank you.
Amazing. Olga?
It is very difficult to follow this. So first I wanted really to thank you for the honor and to be in such a great group. Everyone is here so amazing that I am really humbled to be here. And my story started, I am originally from Poland, and I like chemistry, so I went to, I was getting my master's degree, and there was a professor from chemistry department from the US coming to visit my professor, and he said, I am looking for some research assistants to come and work in my lab. And my advisor from Poland said, Olga likes adventure. She likes to new things. She will go. I had no clue what they said. I didn't speak English. But I'm like, okay, I don't know English. I don't know anyone. Why not? Let's try it. So that was in 1990. So I came here, and after a year, I picked up enough English to start graduate school. And then when I was graduating, the same professor said, I am starting a company based on the research that we've been doing in this lab, and the research is connected to nanotechnology, destruction of toxic chemicals. Do you want to be the first employee? I don't have any business background, and this is a great opportunity, and it slightly detoured me from my vision of being a professor and teaching, but I'm like, let's not try. So I went, and I was the first employee in the company. I spent over there 15 years, and this was a great experience because we developed products initially for the Department of Defense to destroy toxic chemicals, to provide products that make soldiers safer. And then after about 15 years over there, I moved to a place where I'm right now, which is Battelle Memorial Institute. And this is the largest not-for-profit research organization. And you cannot have a better motto. Basically, our founder in 1925 wanted to found an organization that does the science for the betterment of the humankind. And that's what we are doing. It's amazing, the people that are working at Battelle, all the scientists. And throughout the years that my involvement with the nanotechnology, I was so incredibly lucky to work in the areas of safer environment. Right now, I am in the areas of oil and gas industry, making our exploration better and more environmentally sustainable. But also, I had a chance to work on projects to develop biomarkers for detecting cancer in the blood. And actually, one of my collaborators is here on the audience. So this United States gives you some incredible opportunities and the ecosystem to give you chances and help you grow. And I've been also involved with the Pipeline, which is a Midwest organization that helps entrepreneurs to grow, gives them all the tools so they are successful. And it has been an incredible journey. and I would not be able to achieve it, what I have done anywhere else, and to be a part of such a great community. So I'm really, really grateful. That's my story. Thank you.
Let's hear from Anna. You next.
Sure. So my journey started, I grew up in Moscow, which at the time was part of the Soviet Union, and my big break was the Soviet Union falling apart, believe it or not. So my father and his family were able to get refugee status and move to the United States. My mother, who's an entrepreneur by nature, she started one of the first private boys and girls clubs in Moscow, decided, well, I'm not going to be outdone, and I want you to have the relationship with your dad, and I want you to have the opportunity, so we're going to the U.S. With no real plan of how we were going to get our visa, what we were going to do. Luckily, she was able to win a green card in the lottery, so thank you for running that particular program. And in the meantime, we did what we had to do. We cleaned houses, we delivered mail, we did what we had to do. And my mom had the foresight to live right by the train tracks in this town that had a really good public high school system. And we cleaned those houses so I could continue to take piano lessons. And those piano lessons eventually paid for my college education. So I went to Boston University, and that's where I actually discovered entrepreneurship for the first time. And I was bitten by the bug. Actually, my class was the first class to have an entrepreneurship major. Most people didn't even know that word at the time. And I was like, great, I want to go out and build my own business and create jobs, and this is what I'm going to do with my life. And so I started a business while I was in college. I moved out to LA. I worked with another company that was all about inspiring young people to start their own businesses. I can't say that both of those businesses were incredibly successful, but they were great learning experiences, and they led me to land at Google, which is a company, while not obviously anymore a startup, has one of the most entrepreneurial and innovative cultures anywhere. And I spent 5 incredible years building businesses there. And at the end of that, I've decided, okay, I want to go out there in the world and help other young people to pursue their passions, to create more jobs, to be entrepreneurs. So a group of us left to start this company called Upstart, which is where I am now. And what we do is we're a crowdfunding platform that lets young people raise money in exchange for a portion of their future income. So you're basically monetizing your future potential to be able to have money now to pursue whatever it is that you want to do with your life. So a big portion of the students on our platform are using the money to start their own businesses, to learn how to code, to pursue careers that maybe are in research or betterment of humanity that maybe don't pay as well, but have either societal impact or are a great learning experience for them. So they're able to raise money to pursue those opportunities, and they raise money from investors who believe in their aspirations. And then those investors have the option to become mentors to those students as well. So we're connecting the older generation of successful investors to this young generation of bright, ambitious students that are trying to pursue really ambitious things, and aligning their financial investments, financial incentives, so that if the students do well, the investors do well, and so everybody benefits. So the company has been around for a year. We've only been live since October, but we've already had 100 students funded. We have about $1 million that has been invested on the platform. We've raised a lot of venture capital ourselves. So our goal is to really turn these young, ambitious people into job creators, into people that are really bettering the economy by giving them the capital and the support to pursue what they want to do. So that's my story.
Thank you. Firstly, it's a great honor to have this recognition, so I really appreciate that. Thank you. My story, I guess, is nowhere near as challenging as John's or Anna's was. I came from India. My parents gave me the gift of education. I went to one of the better engineering schools out over there, and after graduation, I had a few different options. I could join an MBA program in India, I had a good job, and I had this scholarship from the University of Texas at Austin. So maybe it's the entrepreneur in me that got manifest early. I decided to do the thing that I knew the least about, which is to take this option and come to the United States. I wanted to see the country, I wanted to get a good education, so I said I could always come back and get these jobs. So I came and I got into research. I can't say I knew what I was getting into. I was a chemical engineering major. But going through that, I took a chance on a young professor who was out there, and we went into the field of biomedical research, which in those days in Texas, oil was big, separations, those types of things were huge. This is almost a laughing stock of what you would do for a research career. But it turned out to be a good move. This professor was very bright. He had a bright future ahead of him. I worked along with him, learned a lot, got my master's degree, and then did the right thing of saying, let's go look for a job now. This is over. Applied to 30 places, promptly got 30 rejections, which was very rattling. This was because I, again, didn't have a green card, so they wouldn't even consider me. This I could have taken as a signal that I was not wanted in this country and I should go back. But I chose to persevere. I made the choice that I would continue on, get my PhD, go further into research, learn more. My professor had some additional good ideas. So we hung in there. We created some new chemistries. For the first time, you could do chemical reactions in contact with living tissues. So that was a very fundamental discovery. We were looking at transplanting organs from animals into humans. So cells that could go from one animal to another animal and not be rejected. So we would build these little jackets around them of materials around each cell that could protect it from the immune system of the host. So this became quite fundamental. We also did other things by this type of methodology where we could direct wound healing, we could prevent leakage from tissues, etc. Organs that carry air, liquid, blood, all kinds of fluids in the body. You could find a way of sealing them where stitching and etc. is not efficient and is not effective. So anyway, we were approached by a venture capital fund from California that wanted to start up a company, and it was going to be located in Boston because one of the other founders was from MIT. I didn't know anything about Boston. I picked up again and moved over there, and we started up. This company ended up creating the first sealant for lung cancer surgery, and when the company went public, it was a great experience. But I wasn't running the company. I was the chief technology guy. I wasn't running the company. And along that, I realized that I could do a limited amount in directing the direction of the company. So I left after 6 years over there and decided I wanted to do things slightly differently. Again, I had no technology at my disposal, so I decided we would go ahead and invent new technology. My wife, who's here with me today, was just graduating from her MBA at BU. And we had a little bit of savings, but it was the unknown thing to do, and we launched into a career of starting a new company. But this time, instead of putting all the technology into the operating company, we decided to create a holding company. A holding company where we would put all the intellectual property and then license it for field-specific applications so we could create multiple companies. This actually is taught, some of you guys were from Harvard, it's actually taught as a case now of how to execute on intellectual property. So from that, we have since created probably 6 direct companies based on that technology and created an enabler with my partner, Fred Khoshravi, who's out on the West Coast, where we have been able to create about a dozen different companies. We enable entrepreneurs because we realize that there isn't enough time in the day for us individually to run any of these. How many of these can we run at one time? I run 2 companies right now. One's in the radiation oncology field and one's in the ophthalmology field. It takes a lot of effort, but we can't scale that. So we want to create a platform to scale additional entrepreneurs. And what was lacking was not capital. Capital could be acquired. And what was not lacking was infrastructure. Infrastructure could be gotten. What was lacking was that people did not have the expertise or the intellectual capital, and they needed guidance, mentorship, support, structure. Those types of things we provide. And we've been able to be fortunate to work with a vast number of entrepreneurs and create devices for heart valve replacements, for capturing clot, treating diabetics, analytic solutions for sales and marketing types of endeavors. So it's been just a fantastic experience, and the ecosystem of people that we have been associated with, whether they are other entrepreneurs, whether they are physicians who have ideas, whether they are investors, venture capitalists, angels, it's just service provider. It's just been an exhilarating experience. And I think that ecosystem that is there in the United States is very hard to rival anywhere else. And I think once that is there, that is our competitive advantage. And I've been fortunate to be a part of that and have gone through this process. So that's my story.
Good morning. First, I want to thank you all for the recognition. This recognition definitely it belongs to my team, University of Illinois at Chicago, my wife, and my kids, and my godchildren, Hamza, Nimlan, Arani, and Matt and Abhi. I owe my life to this country. I was born in a country called Sri Lanka, and we saw the way the people lost freedom. We went through 30 years of civil war. But I was born to two teachers. They were able to provide me the education, but they did definitely taught me to depend on yourself and help the community when you can. I remember selling coconut and mangoes because I was the sixth in the family. And once you send one kid to outside the country, you ran out of money. But pride is something I learned from my dad and mom. I came here in 1982. I remember the way I landed in Ohio Airport to join University of Illinois at Chicago. The care they took as a human being, giving me direction to how to go out of the airport, making sure that I have a place to stay. And the amount of detail they have gone through at University of Illinois at Chicago to make sure I'm okay, I come here. It's just incredible. It is just the value this country has for the human being, and to treat the person for who he is, not because of the color, not what he has, but as a person. That impacted me a huge deal. I started my PhD, and there were so many people helped me out, but there are in 1983, Professor Raka and Professor Fori started a new lab called Microphysics Lab, received multi-million dollars to set up the next generation of infrared night vision technology for the defense. Obviously, you landed in Chicago. First thing, my reaction when I landed in Chicago about my knowledge is I saw the sign for hot dog, and it said, I didn't know that Americans eat dog meat. I do know sausage, but I didn't know about this. So that's how much knowledge I had. Suddenly, I am given an opportunity to build a new lab, multi-million vacuum technology, which currently is used in fighter planes and satellites, and help protect those who protect us. That I still couldn't believe what is that made them believe, taking me as a first student, and believe that I can make it happen. Since then, there are so many, Raytheon, BAE, every companies are using it. This material is utilized for it. But really what makes an impact on every immigrant is the time the people took to train me. Really, they pushed me to the limit, but every step of the way, they were there to make sure the person is protected too. Yes, and that helped me. And so in 1997, I realized that the only way the sensor material can be protected is start your own company. I started EPIR Technologies at that time. And my wife managed to allow me to initiate it in my basement, and then allowed me to move into her dental clinic. She's a dentist. She has a clinic. Then obviously we have now 30,000 square feet total combined together, close to 70 employees. What I found during the process is one is Midwest has 17% of the physicists but don't have a good mechanism in place to transfer university technology to create job in Midwest. 17% of the physicists of entire country lives in Midwest. So I basically thought the best way to, but at the same time I had the help from university. University of Illinois has been all the way helped me to build it up. So after forming the company, which is now the supply chain, we are providing mercury material for infrared sensors, for defense. I realized that the best way I can help is form an incubator, because I came to this country because of Bell Labs and IBM Labs, and suddenly all gone. So took all the assets from what we made from the company PR, put it into something called Swanand Laboratory, and brought Raja Krishnamurthy to spearhead it, to build more of a pseudo Bell Labs in that place. So that's how we built it. That's my story. And for currently, what we are trying to do is to create employment in Illinois, and we just formed INSPIRE, something called Institute for Solar Photovoltaic Edu Training, because the same sensor material is great material for solar cells. So we are trying to create clubs. What best way to educate about the solar cell is to educate the grassroots, so that people can go and tell the parents. So we kind of start building that club. So it's overall, I believe that there should be an incubator in Illinois, and Illinois has all the talents in it, and hope we will succeed, and hope, Raja, you will succeed. Thanks. Thank you.
Well, let me just first start by saying thank you. You all have made tremendous, tremendous contributions to our country and our society, and there are millions more in this country just like you, and I'm just so happy and honored that you are here to share your stories today. They were all very powerful and inspiring. I guess the first question that I'd want to start off by asking is, there are potentially millions of people out there who are like you 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. If you had to give advice to some of those folks who are here in this country looking to be entrepreneurs, having a hard time figuring out this country, what advice would you give them to folks who might be watching today, or who are in the audience, or who might see this at a later point? We'll start with you.
Yeah, the first thing I would say that you are going to fall down several times. The success is going to be based on, can you get up, dust yourself, and start moving forward. There will be a lot of people will tell you it's going to be very difficult, but this country always has an opportunity to make it happen. So learn from what the mistake you make, and get up, start walking. So,
my advice would be, talk to people and ask them for help. There are just so many people that are willing to help you as long as you ask. If you don't do that, you will not get help. And there are just so many different also organizations, agencies. Like I was associated with the pipeline that is supported by the Kauffman Foundation. And these people are there to make you succeed. So just utilize all the resources, and they are there.
Well, the first thing I would tell them, the first thing any of us should do is to pray. You pray to the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit will tell you exactly what to do and empower you to get what you need. And these countries just have been blessed by so much talent and organizations. Just like Alexis de Tocqueville, when first came to America, he was so impressed by the social organization of this country. I mean, the amount of non-profit organizations that are out there is unbelievable. That can so specialized that anything you want to do, I think it's easy to get support and technical assistance and write grants. And I mean, there are mentors, there are angels willing to invest, angel investors willing to support you. Just knock the doors. But the first thing you need to do is to pray, and you will be guided.
So I'll use the words of one of the upstarts on our platform who recently went to Kenya to start a music company there, which is, what is it that you want to do someday? And why not do that right now? Because it actually, taking on entrepreneurial risk doesn't get any easier as there's a lot of people that say, well, I'm just going to go do this job for 5 years, and then someday down the line, when I've earned myself the freedom to do what I want to do, I'll get to that. And we see that so many times, those 5 years turn into 10 years, turn into 20 years, and then you look back and you never did that thing that you wanted to do. And what if you had been a wild success at that? This country is very forgiving of failure. Worst thing that happens is you lose a couple of years trying and learning, and best thing that happens is that you succeed, and that happens more often than not. So that would be the first thing I would say. And then the second thing I would say, along the lines of what everyone else here has said, is surround yourself with smart people that are willing to give you smart and honest advice, because I think that will be tremendously helpful in your life going forward.
What I would say is take control of your destiny. What happens is oftentimes we'll find ourselves in a situation where we are there to blame other things, circumstances, people, our luck, what have you. You can either be a victim or you can kind of say, I can do things better. If I can think of a way of doing things better, then I should go do it. So instead of being a log that's drifting down the river, be a canoe that's paddling actively.
That's great advice. And again, want to just thank you all. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I do want to ask you all to stay on stage here for our next speaker, who, as an immigrant himself, Alejandro Mayorkas is the director of the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. He is in charge of the largest immigration system in the world, and he's responsible for enhancing the USCIS's efforts to provide accurate and useful information to customers, grant immigration and citizenship benefits, promote an awareness and understanding of citizenship, and ensure the integrity of the immigration system. I know he is going to be awarding a couple additional honors here today, but I do want to thank you all for being here and sharing your stories, and congratulations for being champions of change.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, and thank you all for being here. I should let you know that my tolerance for risk was so low as a young man that I actually just became a lawyer. So I feel a bit out of place here. The United States has always benefited from the contributions of immigrants and naturalized citizens, from entrepreneurs to scientists, cultural icons, members of the U.S. Armed Forces, and public servants. We are enriched by immigrants' drive, talents, and achievements. Today, we have the privilege of hearing the stories of 12 immigrant entrepreneurs. We have been inspired by their stories and their accomplishments. As the director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the agency responsible for granting immigrants and citizenship benefits, I have the distinct privilege of presenting the 5 individuals today seated at the panel with the highest honor bestowed by our agency, the recognition of being an outstanding American by choice. By recognizing those who have made the very personal decision to become a naturalized United States citizen and highlighting their contributions to this country, we hope to inspire and encourage new immigrants and new citizens alike to participate in their communities and exercise the rights and responsibilities of United States citizenship. I would ask each of you, as I call your name, to join me and receive your certificate as an outstanding American by choice. Sivalingam Sivananthan. Amarpreet Sawani. Anna Mongait. Olga Koper. John Herrera. It is now my honor to introduce Cecilia Munoz, the head of the President's Domestic Policy Council, to provide some closing remarks. Cecilia is and has been for her entire career a guardian and champion of our country's identity and promise as a nation of immigrants. Cecilia.
Thank you, Ali. Is anybody else feeling really inspired by what you just heard here? So let me just say to our champions of change, congratulations, and especially thank you. I love coming to events like this because of it's just a shot in the arm. It's just a moment of inspiration to remind us of why we all do what we do, why people like this extraordinary public servant that you just heard from, Ali Mayorkas, work so hard to help people naturalize, to help people bring in their immigrant family members, to make sure that the government is doing our part to make sure our processes work well, and he's done an extraordinary, extraordinary job of doing that. It reminds me, for those of you who work as advocates, why it's so important to keep the faith and to keep the fight going. And the fight on immigration reform in particular has been a pretty long one. But it's also a reminder of the value of hard work and talent and commitment and faith and all of the things which you all bring to the table and have brought to this country. It is really testament to what immigrants provide today and have provided all throughout our history as a nation. This is a story that is repeated over and over and over again throughout our history. And whenever I come to events like naturalization ceremonies or other events involving great leaders and great individuals in our immigrant community, I have the experience that everybody turns into my parents right away for me, because they were my example and my inspiration in my particular immigration story. And, you know, when you're talking about your parents, you sort of can't argue about what it is they provided to you and to this country. And what is so moving to me is that story is repeated over and over and over again all across this country. And when you hear stories like the ones that we heard today, it's just so clear what the contributions are that immigrants make to this country. And we need that clarity in this moment because we are in the middle of a debate on our immigration system. And that is a debate about who we are as a nation. It's a debate about our past, but it is especially a debate about our future. It's a debate about the kind of country we're going to be in the future and who will make up that country and what kind of energy and drive we will be building on to shape our destiny as a country, our children's destiny. And this is why your stories are so important. Because while, and I knock on wood as I say this, the immigration reform debate is really going rather well in this, I guess I was going to say slightly crazy town, but no, it's actually a very crazy town. We have this moment of bipartisanship that's happening. And that moment of bipartisanship has produced a bill which cleared the Senate Judiciary Committee last week by a 13-5 vote. And we fully expect that moment of bipartisanship to continue on the Senate floor, starting possibly as soon as next week, and then on to the House of Representatives, where we hope and are working towards and fighting for this year being the year where we see an immigration reform happen and finally cross the finish line after many, many years. And today, the work that we're doing today and the achievements that we're celebrating today are a great example of why we do this and why it's important. This is not a debate that we're having out of altruism. It's a debate that we're having because we're smart and because we know where our future lies and because we know something about the engines of our economic growth in this country. And I say this because we are, as we enter this debate, it can be a very emotional debate. It becomes emotional very quickly and very easily. And there will be folks arguing that we should be careful about admitting immigrants or maybe about admitting too many immigrants because they're worried about what they mean to the rest of us. That is an argument that has been made since the founding days of our nation, and it is an argument which will always be made because we are a nation of immigrants, and it is part of our DNA to always be concerned about who is coming today And you all are the answer to that question. And as this debate moves forward, it is incredibly important that we be able to tell our stories. Because those stories have great power and great resonance, and they make this issue personal in a way which is real, which is accurate, and which focuses the conversation on what it is that we are really talking about. Individuals who come to this country and start businesses and create jobs and reunite with their families and strengthen the fabric of our society in a way which enriches us all in myriad ways, in ways that you can't even begin to count. That is what we're fighting for. That's what this debate is about. And there is no stronger impetus to getting across the finish line than the voices and the stories of the people about whom this debate is about. So it just gives me great honor and joy to be able to be a part of this and to thank you for everything that you bring to this country, to our country jointly. It gives me great joy and honor to be able to do this at a time when we are in the thick of an immigration debate which has so much meaning both for individual lives but for our country and for our future. So I thank you for what you've brought, but I especially thank you for what you will continue to bring to all of this. Tell your stories. All of us in this room should never doubt what the power and the resonance that those stories have for the debate, for the country, and for the rest of us. So thank you, all of you, for being part of this, and congratulations to our champions of change.
Now that I am extremely inspired, I want to thank everyone for coming. I especially want to thank Doug Rand and Erica, who I'm sure you got 150 emails from. So can we give them a quick round of applause? That concludes our program for today. I know that everyone is very eager to come and stand exactly where I'm standing and take a photo, which we can absolutely do. We've got a little bit of time left in this room. As you're making your way to the exits, you want to exit through these doors. And once again, if you have a pink badge, you want to come and find me before you go. Thank you all so much for coming.